G'day, you beautiful bastards. Mick here, and bloody hell, do I have some absolute dynamite for you today. Before we dive into the juiciest paddock scandal since Spygate, let me drop this bomb on you. Oscar Piastri just became the youngest Aussie to lead a world championship since Jack Brabham, and the corporate media is deliberately burying the real story behind it. Why? Well, that's what we're about to unpack. And trust me, mate, by the end of this yarn, you'll understand why certain people in Woking are absolutely shitting themselves right now. But first, let's talk about what happened in Barcelona, because what you saw on Sunday was just the tip of the iceberg. The kid didn't just win, he destroyed the field with a precision that had even Max Verstappen's engineers scratching their heads. 5 consecutive podiums, matching Hamilton and Senna's McLaren record, and sitting pretty at the top of the championship with a 10-point buffer over his own teammate. But here's the kicker that nobody's talking about, and this is where it gets properly mental. I've got sources inside McLaren, and before you ask, no, I'm not naming names because these blokes would lose their jobs faster than Daniel Ricciardo lost his seat. But they're telling me that Andrea Stella has been running 2 completely different development programs this season. One for Lando, one for Oscar. And guess whose car has been getting the experimental upgrades first? That's right, the 19-year-old rookie who was supposed to be learning from the veteran. Now, you might be thinking, fair dinkum Mick. That's just good team management. But hold on to your stubby holders, because here's where the rabbit hole gets deeper than Webber's championship drought. Remember how Oscar started the season? 3 consecutive wins in Bahrain, Saudi, and Miami. 3 different continents, 3 completely different track characteristics, and 3 dominant performances that defied every bit of conventional wisdom about rookie seasons. The official line from McLaren: Oscar's natural talent. The reality from my garage sources: those cars were so different in setup that they might as well have been running different engines. While Lando was stuck with the proven 2024 philosophy, Oscar was test driving what's essentially the 2026 concept car disguised as upgrades. But here's the mental part, and this is why I reckon certain people are getting nervous. Oscar didn't just adapt to these experimental setups, he's been providing feedback that's revolutionising how McLaren approaches race strategy. My source tells me that after Barcelona, the team's head of aerodynamics called Oscar's technical debriefs the most insightful since Lewis Hamilton's early Ferrari sessions. Now let's pause there for a hot minute, because I need to address something that's been doing my head in all week. The mainstream F1 media keeps pushing this narrative that Oscar is boring or emotionless. What a load of absolute codswallop. I've been watching this kid since his karting days. Yeah, that's right. I was trackside when he was running Fernando's FA karts at Sandown. And what you're seeing isn't lack of emotion, it's pure calculated assassin mentality. You know what Oscar told me after his Melbourne retirement? And this is off the record from my mate who works pit wall. He said, "That DNF just cost me 2 seconds per lap learning. I won't make that mistake again." 2 seconds per lap learning. Most rookies would be crying into their VB, but our boy was already calculating how to turn disaster into data. Speaking of data, let's talk about something the FIA doesn't want you to know about. Remember Oscar's pole position in Barcelona? The telemetry data from that qualifying session has been classified higher than Max's engine maps. Why? Because Oscar found a racing line through turn 5 that's physically impossible, according to current aerodynamic modelling. He's not just driving the car, he's rewriting the physics textbook while doing 300 kilometers per hour. But wait, there's more. And this is where things get properly spicy. My sources are telling me that Red Bull has been secretly analysing Oscar's onboard footage frame by frame, and they've discovered something that's got Christian Horner losing sleep. Oscar's steering inputs are so precise that their simulation department initially thought the data was corrupted. Turns out the kid has been driving with a smoothness coefficient that's 0.3 points higher than any current F1 driver, including Max. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mick, how the hell does a second-year driver develop that kind of precision? Well, here's where Fernando Alonso comes back into our story. And trust me, this connection runs deeper than just those FA kart days. Remember when Oscar was Alpine's reserve driver in 2022? Officially, he was just observing and learning. but I've got it on good authority that Fernando was secretly coaching Oscar during private simulator sessions, not the official Alpine sims. We're talking about Fernando's personal rig in his Spanish compound. Hours and hours of data analysis, racecraft development, and something Fernando calls championship mentality conditioning. The mental part? Fernando wasn't just teaching Oscar how to drive, he was teaching him how to think like a champion. Every race scenario, every strategic possibility, every psychological pressure point that comes with leading a world championship. Fernando basically created a championship-ready driver and then watched him sign with the competition. Alpine's management had no bloody clue this was happening. They thought they had Oscar locked up with their development program, but Fernando was running a parallel academy that was light years ahead of anything Alpine could offer. When Oscar jumped to McLaren, he wasn't just bringing raw talent, he was bringing 2 decades of Fernando's championship wisdom packed into a 22-year-old body. And now here's the story that's going to absolutely blow your minds, because what I'm about to tell you is so explosive that it could reshape the entire 2025 championship fight. 3 weeks ago, during the Monaco GP weekend, there was a closed-door meeting at the Hotel Hermitage. Present were Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, and a representative from the Piastri family management team. Also in attendance, and this is the kicker, was a lawyer from the same firm that handled Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes contract negotiations. Why would Oscar need that level of legal firepower when he's already got a contract through 2026? Well, according to my source, who works catering at these high-end Monaco establishments, the conversation wasn't about extending Oscar's deal, it was about protecting it. Specifically, protecting it from a buyout clause that apparently nobody knew existed. Here's where it gets mental. Red Bull has been quietly accumulating a war chest specifically designed to trigger Oscar's release clause. The number being whispered in paddock circles, 150 million euros. Not just for the buyout, but as a signing bonus for Oscar to join Red Bull for the 2026 season, when the new engine regulations come into play. But here's the twist that makes this whole situation absolutely mental. Oscar apparently has zero interest in leaving McLaren. Not because of loyalty, not because of money, but because McLaren's 2026 car concept is so revolutionary that it could dominate the sport for the next decade. My technical source describes it as what Adrian Newey would build if he had unlimited budget and complete creative freedom. The problem? Red Bull knows this too. And they're not trying to sign Oscar to make him faster. They're trying to sign him to stop McLaren from becoming unstoppable. It's not a driver acquisition, it's a strategic nuclear option. Now, while all this corporate warfare is happening in the background, Oscar just keeps doing what Oscar does, winning races and pretending he doesn't know that half the paddock is plotting around him. After Barcelona, when asked about the championship pressure, you know what he said? "Pressure is for tyres, mate. I'm just here to drive fast cars." But behind that laid-back Aussie exterior, Oscar's been making moves that would make Machiavelli proud. Remember his engineer changeover before Miami? Officially, it was described as optimization of communication protocols. The reality? Oscar specifically requested the data engineer who previously worked with Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. Not for his race engineering skills, but for his championship-winning strategic mind. This engineer, let's call him Deep Throttle, because he's still actively employed and could lose his job, has been feeding Oscar insights about championship psychology that go way beyond racecraft. We're talking about media management, sponsor relationships, team politics, and most importantly, how to handle the pressure when the entire paddock starts targeting you. And they are targeting him. Make no mistake. After Barcelona, I counted no fewer than 7 different team principals who made specific comments about Oscar's inexperience under pressure. That's not coincidence. That's coordinated psychological warfare. They're trying to plant seeds of doubt in his head before the championship fight intensifies. The beautiful part? It's not working. In fact, my sources tell me that Oscar has been using these comments as motivation. After each failed criticism, he goes back to the simulator and runs specific scenarios designed to prove his critics wrong. When Ferrari's team principal suggested Oscar might struggle with tyre strategy, Oscar spent 6 hours that night perfecting stint management. When Mercedes questioned his wheel-to-wheel racecraft, Oscar practiced overtaking sequences until 2 a.m. But here's what's really got me excited about our boys' championship chances, and this is information that could literally change how you bet on the remainder of this season. Oscar has been secretly working with a sports psychologist who previously helped Australian cricket teams win Ashes series. Not just any sports psychologist, but the same bloke who taught Steve Smith how to mentally dismantle English bowling attacks over 5-day test matches. The techniques they've been developing, it's called championship state management, and it's designed specifically for the unique pressures of Formula One. While other drivers practice physical fitness and reaction times, Oscar has been training his brain to maintain optimal decision-making under the exact conditions he'll face during the title fight's crucial moments. And speaking of crucial moments, let me tell you about something that happened during Barcelona practice that never made it into any official reports. During FP2, Oscar's car suffered what appeared to be a minor electrical glitch. Nothing dramatic, just a brief power loss that cost him about half a second on his fastest lap. Most drivers would report it immediately and head for the garage. Oscar, he spent the next 20 minutes deliberately triggering the same glitch in different corners, learning exactly how the car behaved under compromised conditions. By the time he reported the issue, he'd already developed 3 different driving techniques to compensate for it. That's not just adaptability, that's championship-level thinking under pressure. The McLaren engineers were so impressed that they've started deliberately introducing minor setup complications during practice sessions, just to watch Oscar solve them in real time. It's become an unofficial training program that they're calling Piastri pressure testing. Now let's talk about something that I guarantee you haven't heard anywhere else, because this information comes directly from someone who was in the room when it happened. Last Tuesday, during McLaren's weekly strategy meeting, Oscar presented a 47-slide analysis of every remaining circuit on the 2025 calendar. Not just racing lines and setup preferences, but detailed breakdowns of how each track's characteristics could impact the championship fight. The presentation included weather probability analyses, historical data about late-season pressure patterns, and even psychological profiles of his main championship rivals. The McLaren strategy team was so blown away that they've officially adopted Oscar's framework as their championship campaign blueprint. But here's the kicker. Buried in slide 23 was Oscar's prediction about which specific races would determine the championship outcome. According to his analysis, the title will be decided across 3 specific weekends: Silverstone, Spa, and Singapore. Not because of the points available, but because of the unique strategic and psychological challenges these circuits present. Oscar's reasoning: Silverstone will test his ability to perform under massive home crowd pressure. Remember, half of Australia will be awake at 3 a.m. watching. Spa will challenge his racecraft in changing conditions. Historically, the track where championships are won or lost through pure driving skill. And Singapore? That's where his mental conditioning will face its ultimate test, under lights, in crushing humidity, with the championship potentially on the line. The scary part? Oscar isn't just preparing for these weekends, he's been designing his entire season strategy around peaking at exactly the right moments. While his rivals are managing their championship campaigns race by race, Oscar's been playing 4-dimensional chess, positioning himself for maximum psychological and strategic advantage when it matters most. And that brings me to something absolutely mental that's been happening behind the scenes at McLaren. Remember how I mentioned that Oscar's been running experimental setups? Well, it turns out those weren't just random upgrades. They were specifically designed to prepare him for the unique challenges of each championship deciding circuit. The Bahrain setup, that was Singapore preparation. The Miami configuration, pure Silverstone development. Every single race win this season has actually been a testing session for the championship finale. Oscar hasn't just been winning races, he's been gathering data for a title fight that he started planning before the season even began. My technical source describes it as the most sophisticated championship campaign in modern F1 history. While other teams are reacting to each weekend's challenges, McLaren and Oscar have been proactively preparing for scenarios that haven't even happened yet. But here's where things get really interesting, and this is information that could genuinely impact the betting markets if enough people understand what's really happening. Oscar's championship strategy isn't just about winning races, it's about breaking his rival's psychological resistance through consistent, devastating dominance. Think about it. 5 wins in 9 races, including 3 consecutive victories to start the season. That's not just good driving. That's systematic demolition of competitive confidence. Every time Max or Charles or Lando think they've found Oscar's weakness, he responds with another dominant performance that proves them wrong. The beautiful part? Oscar's doing it while making it look effortless. No dramatic radio messages, no emotional celebrations, just clinical, professional excellence that makes his rivals question whether they're even playing the same sport. It's psychological warfare disguised as humble professionalism. And now, let me share something that's going to absolutely blow your mind about what's really happening in the championship fight. Remember Oscar's DNF in Melbourne, his home race, the one weekend where he was expected to struggle with pressure? Well, that wasn't bad luck or rookie mistakes. That was sabotage. Not deliberate sabotage. I'm not suggesting some conspiracy theory nonsense, but sabotage through good intentions. McLaren's Australian marketing team was so excited about Oscar's homecoming that they loaded him with media obligations, fan events, and sponsor appearances that completely disrupted his normal preparation routine. Oscar spent the week before Melbourne doing everything except what he needed to do to win the race. Photo shoots, interviews, meet and greets, charity events, all the corporate bullshit that takes a driver's focus away from the actual racing. By the time he got in the car for FP1, he was mentally exhausted before he'd even turned a lap. The DNF was inevitable. Not because of mechanical failure, that was just the trigger, but because Oscar's mental preparation had been completely compromised by well-meaning distractions. It was an expensive lesson about championship management that Oscar will never forget. Want proof? Look at how he's handled every race weekend since Melbourne. Minimal media beyond the mandatory obligations, controlled sponsor appearances, and laser focus on the technical aspects of each weekend. Oscar learned that being Australia's golden boy is great for marketing but terrible for championship winning. The transformation has been remarkable. In Melbourne, Oscar was trying to be everyone's mate while driving at 300 kilometres per hour. Since then, he's been a ruthless, focused competitor who happens to sign autographs when required. That shift in mentality is worth at least 2/10 per lap in qualifying and a measurable psychological advantage during races. Now, let me tell you about something that happened during the Barcelona weekend that perfectly illustrates what makes Oscar special and why I'm absolutely convinced he's going to win this championship. During Saturday morning's driver briefing, the race director was explaining track limit enforcement procedures for turn 14. Most drivers were half listening, checking their phones, or chatting with teammates. Oscar? He was taking detailed notes and asking specific questions about the timing loops and camera angles used for monitoring. Not because he planned to cheat, but because he wanted to understand exactly how close to the limit he could push without penalty. That afternoon, Oscar qualified on pole by finding 0.02 of a second in turn 14 that nobody else could access. Not through superior car performance, but through superior understanding of exactly where the legal racing line ended and the penalty zone began. That's championship-level attention to detail that can't be taught. But here's what really impressed me about that Barcelona weekend, and this is something that I guarantee you won't hear from any other F1 commentator, because they weren't paying attention to the right details. During Sunday's race, when Max was pressuring Oscar for the lead, Oscar made a defensive move that looked routine, but was actually genius-level racecraft. Going into turn 1, with Max right behind him, Oscar positioned his car exactly 1.2 metres from the racing line. Not 1.0 metres, not 1.5 metres, but precisely 1.2 metres. Why that specific distance? Because that's the optimal positioning to force a pursuing driver to choose between an impossible outside pass or an equally impossible inside dive bomb. Max, being Max, tried the inside move anyway and ended up overdriving the corner, giving Oscar a 0.8 second gap that he maintained for the rest of the race. One defensive move, executed with mathematical precision, that essentially decided the outcome of a Grand Prix. That's not luck or talent, that's championship-level tactical intelligence. And that brings me to something absolutely explosive that I've been saving for the right moment to share. 3 weeks ago, I received a tip from someone who works in F1's timing and scoring department. They can't go public because it would end their career, but the information they shared could completely change how we understand Oscar's championship campaign. According to this source, Oscar's sector times show a consistency pattern that's statistically impossible unless he's been practicing each circuit, lay out on a professional simulator for hundreds of hours. Not just quick laps, but consistent quick laps, race after race, in conditions ranging from bone dry to monsoon wet. The data suggests that Oscar has been preparing for this championship fight for at least 18 months, long before anyone else recognised that McLaren would be competitive in 2025. While his rivals were focused on 2024 battles, Oscar was already wargaming scenarios for championship campaigns that nobody else saw coming. But here's the mental part. The simulator data shows that Oscar hasn't just been practicing current circuits. He's been running scenarios for every possible track configuration, weather condition, and strategic situation that could impact a championship fight. We're talking about thousands of hours of preparation for specific scenarios that might never happen. The result? When unexpected situations arise during actual races, Oscar's brain doesn't have to calculate optimal responses in real time. He's already practiced the exact scenario hundreds of times in simulation, so his reactions are automatic and optimal. It's like having a championship-winning autopilot that activates whenever pressure increases. My source describes it as the most comprehensive championship preparation program in Formula One history. While other drivers practice general racecraft, Oscar has been preparing for specific challenges that might occur during specific championship scenarios. It's the difference between learning to play chess and memorizing every possible endgame combination. And now, let me share the most explosive piece of information that I've uncovered about this championship fight. Something so significant that it could literally change everything you think you know about the 2025 season. Last Monday, during what was supposed to be a routine technical meeting at McLaren's working headquarters, Oscar presented the team with a proposal that left senior management speechless. He wants to skip the summer break. Not skip vacation time. Oscar's planning to spend the summer break at McLaren's factory, working directly with the aerodynamics team to develop specific upgrades for the championship's final phase. We're talking about a driver who's willing to sacrifice his personal time to gain technical advantages that could determine the championship outcome. But here's the kicker. Oscar doesn't just want to observe the development process, he wants to contribute to it. According to my source inside McLaren's technical department, Oscar has been studying aerodynamic principles and chassis dynamics with the same intensity that he studies racing lines. The kid who started karting with Fernando's equipment is now positioning himself to become the most technically sophisticated driver-engineer combination since Adrian Newey was actively designing cars. Oscar isn't just driving McLaren's championship campaign, he's helping to engineer it. McLaren's response? They've cleared an entire section of their technical department for Oscar's summer program. No other driver in F1 history has been given that level of access to a team's development process during their championship campaign. It's unprecedented collaboration between driver and constructor. But wait, there's more. And this is where the story becomes absolutely mental. Remember how I mentioned that Red Bull has been trying to trigger Oscar's release clause? Well, it turns out that Oscar's summer break proposal isn't just about technical development. It's a strategic move designed to make him legally unavailable for contract negotiations until after the championship is decided. By embedding himself in McLaren's technical operations, Oscar creates a conflict of interest that would prevent him from engaging with rival teams. It's brilliant legal maneuvering disguised as dedication to championship preparation. Oscar's not just out driving his rivals, he's outthinking their business managers. The beautiful part, Red Bull probably doesn't realize what's happening until it's too late. While they're preparing contract offers and buyout strategies, Oscar's making himself contractually and practically unavailable for their entire recruiting timeline. And that brings me to something that perfectly encapsulates why Oscar is going to win this championship and why Australia should be absolutely mental with excitement about what we're witnessing. 2 weeks ago, during a private McLaren strategy session, Oscar was asked to identify his biggest weakness as a championship contender. Without hesitation, he said, "I don't have enough experience losing championships." Think about that for a moment. Most drivers would identify technical weaknesses, racecraft limitations, or pressure management issues. Oscar identified lack of failure experience as his primary vulnerability. That's championship mentality that goes beyond traditional sports psychology. His reasoning: I've won every championship I've seriously contested since karting. I don't know how I'll react if this one starts slipping away, and that unknown reaction could be the thing that actually makes it slip away. McLaren's response was to create simulation scenarios where Oscar practices losing championship points through various mechanical failures, strategic mistakes, and driver errors. They're literally training him to lose gracefully so that he can win ultimately. It's the most sophisticated psychological preparation program in motorsport history, and it's being applied to a driver who's already demonstrated championship caliber performance under pressure. The combination could be absolutely devastating to his rival's chances. And now, let me share something that's going to give you goosebumps about Oscar's championship potential, because what I'm about to tell you demonstrates that this kid isn't just fast, he's historically significant. Last weekend, after Oscar's Barcelona victory, McLaren's data analysis team ran a comparison between Oscar's 2025 performances and every championship-winning season since 2000. The statistical breakdown is mind-blowing. Oscar's consistency index, measuring lap time variation across different conditions, rates higher than any first-year championship winner in modern F1 history. His strategic decision-making under pressure scores in the 98th percentile compared to established champions. Most remarkably, his psychological stability metrics exceed even Lewis Hamilton's 2008 championship-winning measurements. But here's the stat that made McLaren's senior management call an emergency meeting. Oscar's improvement trajectory suggests that he's still getting faster. While most drivers peak performance-wise during their championship campaigns, Oscar appears to be accelerating his development even as the pressure increases. The implications are staggering. If Oscar wins the 2025 championship while still improving as a driver, McLaren could be looking at a decade of dominance that makes Mercedes' 2014 to 2020 run look like a brief hot streak. And that brings me to the final piece of explosive information that I've been saving for the end of today's deep dive. Something so significant that it could reshape how we understand not just Oscar's championship chances, but the entire future of Formula One. 3 days ago, I received confirmation from a source inside the FIA technical department about something that's been rumoured in paddock circles for months. Oscar has been secretly consulting on the 2026 regulatory framework. Not just providing driver input, actively contributing to the technical regulations that will define F1's next era. Why is this significant? Because Oscar isn't just preparing to win the 2025 championship, he's helping to design the rules that will determine championship winners for the next decade. It's like having inside information about the test questions before taking the exam. The FIA approached Oscar because his technical feedback during 2024 rookie briefings was so sophisticated that it impressed senior technical officials. His understanding of aerodynamic principles, power unit efficiency, and chassis dynamics exceeded what they expected from drivers with 10 times his experience. Now, Oscar's contributing to regulations that could favour McLaren's design philosophy while potentially disadvantaging rival teams who aren't privy to the same developmental insights. It's not cheating, it's strategic positioning that could pay dividends for years beyond 2025. My source describes it as the most significant driver regulatory collaboration since Jackie Stewart's safety campaigns. But instead of improving safety, Oscar's improving his own competitive advantages through legitimate regulatory influence. And here's the mental part. Oscar's regulatory contributions focus specifically on areas where he's already demonstrated superiority: tyre management, energy deployment, efficiency, and aerodynamic consistency across different atmospheric conditions. The 2026 regulations could literally be designed around Oscar's natural driving strengths. So here's where we stand, you beautiful bastards. Oscar Piastri isn't just leading the 2025 World Championship, he's systematically positioning himself to dominate Formula One for the next decade. Through technical excellence, strategic intelligence, psychological preparation, and regulatory influence, he's creating competitive advantages that extend far beyond pure driving talent. The kid who started with Fernando's karts is now rewriting the playbook for championship success. While his rivals focus on winning individual races, Oscar's building an empire designed to win multiple championships across different regulatory eras. Is it working? Well, 5 wins in 9 races, leading the championship by 10 points, and systematically demolishing the psychological resistance of drivers who are supposed to be his superiors. You tell me. But remember, you heard all this here first from your mate Mick, who's been watching Oscar since those early karting days at Sandown. The mainstream media will catch up eventually, but by then, Oscar will probably be holding his first World Championship trophy and planning his assault on the record books. So there you have it. The real story behind Oscar Piastri's championship campaign, complete with corporate conspiracies, technical innovations, psychological warfare, and regulatory maneuvering that makes House of Cards look like a children's bedtime story. Keep your eyes on our boy over the next few months, because what we're witnessing isn't just another championship fight, it's the birth of a new era in Formula One, with Australia's finest leading the charge. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and the conspiracy theories coming. This is Mick the Mechanic, reminding you that in Formula One, the real race happens off the track. And our boy Oscar is winning that one too. Catch you later, legends.